Welcome back to part 2 of this beginner's tutorial for Jesmonite. In part 1 I showed you how to mix, pour and seal your Jesmonite. So now that you've mastered this, let's have some fun and go to the next level of creativity. I'm starting by applying some gold leaf from the white aura box onto the base of the coaster. I've already prepared some Jesmonite using the mixing methods that I showed you in part 1, and I've added some black pigment powder to get this graphite shade. I'm then pouring it all into the mould and I'm going to let it cure for the full 20 minutes before unmoulding. Now I have some Jesmonite left over, and this is the perfect opportunity to make some terrazzo chips for a future project. So I'm simply using some plastic wrapping that I found lying around in my studio, and I am smoothing a thin but not too thin layer of the Jesmonite and flattening it with my spatula. And now here comes the fun part. After I unmould, I'm going to take the coaster and gently, but not so gently, break it in half. Yep, so satisfying. And before putting each broken piece back into the mould, I'm adding a little more gold leaf to the base of the moulds before I pour in the rest of the resin. Then I'm going to puzzle the two halves back into the same moulds. I've mixed up some resin and I've used just a little black pigment paste to tint it, and you only need a little if you want it to be slightly transparent, but you know, a little goes a long way. And then for one half I am pouring in just a thin layer of resin before adding the broken Jesmonite slice back, and for the other I am pouring it straight on the top, and this is just an experiment to see which method produces the least air pockets, and I can tell you in advance that the first method produced the least air bubbles, so that's good to know. To make terrazzo pieces, break up the cured leftover Jesmonite into whatever size pieces you like and store them for later in separate cups. For the matching resin and Jesmonite pot, I start by mixing and tinting some resin to match the shade of black of the coaster. And then I'm going to pour it into the mould and let it cure. And you can wait overnight or a couple of hours if you prefer. I'm going to add some gold leaf into the mould, and then I'm going to prepare my Jesmonite. And I've chosen this plum pigment powder to tint it, and I'm mixing it really well, and then I'm going to pour it into the mould. And to get all the bubbles out and help them escape, I bang it on the table and tap the sides. I like using this back vibrator to get the bubbles out. It really does help. And then I'm going to let it cure for 20 minutes before unmolding. As you can see here, I didn't have enough Jesmonite, but the great thing about Jesmonite is you can always make some more and add it on top. I just love this two-tone effect. For the lid, I'm using the same method, but this time I'm going to do it in reverse. So normally you shouldn't leave Jesmonite to cure too long in the mold, but I wanted the bottom of the lid to be black to match the resin pot. So after leaving the Jesmonite to cure for the full 20 minutes so that it's hard, that's when I add the resin on the top. It's kind of a risky experiment, but well, I do like experimenting, so I'm going to give this a go. For the lid, I've used the leftover black resin to pull some crystal clusters, and this mold is from Art for Star, but I'm not sure if she still sells this exact mold, but do have a look on her website. She makes new styles all the time, so I'm sure you'll definitely find something you like. The link to her website and the links to all materials used can be found in the description under this video. So now on to this white pot plant with gold gilding. I'm using the same method, but without any resin this time. The two-tone effect is optional, and this method is quicker since you only have to wait for the 20 minutes to unmold. To seal these pieces, I used the same varnish and method you can find in part 1. It's really important to seal your pots, especially if you're using them for plants. since Jesmonite is porous until it's sealed. Now on to the fun part, the gilding. And here's the first method you can use to gild Jesmonite. For the first method, I've used some gold pigment from the Bronzebox collection, and I've mixed it with some acrylic varnish and I've applied it on with a paintbrush. And obviously I've made sure I've washed my paintbrush straight afterwards so it doesn't stick to the bristles. For this pretty pink version, I'm using the same mix of bronze pigment and varnish as before, but this time I'm using a swiping motion with a flat paintbrush. For this method, I use a little gilding on the brush and I dry brush the high points along the pot and the lid. Just the little gold highlight is so pretty. For method 2, I'm going to use Metal Leaf from the White Aura box. I'm using a paintbrush to apply gilding glue to the parts that I want the gold leaf to stick to. So I'm waiting the allotted time specific to my brand of glue, in this case 15 minutes. And then for the third method, I'm going to use a highlighter pen to brush on the gilding. And this is really useful for the delicate areas, and plus it goes on really fast. And as always, you need to seal these with an acrylic varnish once it's fully dried. To speed things up, I'm using a blow dryer, not a heat gun, and I'm going to dry the pen and the gilding glue areas. And then once my gilding size has become transparent, it's time to add the gold leaf, and it's as simple as pressing it onto the glue parts with your fingers and then brushing it off with a paintbrush or a makeup brush. And then to add the crystal clusters to the top, I am using some strong bonding glue and I'm leaving it to set. So I hope you've enjoyed part 2 of this How to Jesmonite series, and if you have any questions or you just want a friendly natter, please leave me a comment. And as always, I wish you a great week, take good care of yourselves, and we'll catch up on my next video. Bye!